Darren Flower. Rock it up. Yeah. Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. All right, all right, all right, all right, all right. It is Saturday. No, it is not Saturday. It is Wednesday, and it is February 15, 2023. And what am I doing here at CFREradio.ca on a Wednesday when my show, Rock It Up, is normally on Saturdays at 1 p.m. EST till 3? What am I doing here? Ah, that's right. I have the opportunity of a lifetime to interview one of my heroes, Mr. Edgar Winter. I can't believe that this is happening. I've been dying to chat with him for 20 years. I've been hosting this show for 11 plus right now, and I've always wanted to do this. Always been dreaming of getting an interview with Edgar Winter for as long as I've had this show. I've interviewed Paul Nelson, who used to play guitar for Johnny Winter, his brother, of course, but I never got a chance to talk to Edgar until now. In fact, I just called him about 2 minutes ago just to make sure that he was there and just run over a couple questions I had for him. But now I'm into the show. It's not Saturday, it's Wednesday, but this is a very special episode of Rock It Up Radio because I'm going to be interviewing Mr. Edgar Winter, who just recently won a Grammy. That is awesome. Let me give him a little ring-a-ding-ding right now, okay? All right, here we go. All right, I'm excited.
Hello?
Yeah! Mr. Edgar Winter!
Are you ready to rock and roll?
Keep on rocking. Yes, Mr. Winter, thank you so much for donating your time for my little radio show. I played a lot of your music over the last 11 years on Rock It Up Radio. I'm going to be retiring in a couple weeks, and what a great way to send me off, being able to interview you, one of my heroes. I have to tell you...
Thank you, Darren, and thanks for playing the music and helping keep it alive.
Oh,
means the world.
Of course. I have to tell you, the first time I ever really heard your music was probably in movies like Wayne's World or The Simpsons when they played little snippets of Frankenstein, and I always thought it was so cool. And my first proper introduction to you and your music was Frankenstein, but... about 19 years ago, somewhere at a Best Buy, I somehow stumbled into your band White Trash, and the first ever recording I bought was that first album, and it knocked me out of my socks. It was so good. I'll put that album against any classic rock album ever. Eat a Peach, Zeppelin 4, whatever. I will put that first White Trash album up against anything. I just wanted to let you know, and that was the first time I ever heard your music.
Thank you. You know, it's interesting in that album is really representative of a unique style of music that I've never heard anywhere other than that particular area that I grew up in southeast Texas. As far as I think White Trash was the funkiest, most soulful white R&B band ever, you know.
Well, I can't disagree.
We love that music, and we love to play it. It's interesting also because I didn't really appreciate that when I was growing up. There was just the environment that I found myself surrounded with, and I remember when I moved up to New York, I thought, oh, they're going to be the greatest musicians in the world. But there was no real, identifiable New York sound. It was sort of like difference between chicken soup and gumbo. I'll have the gumbo, thank you.
Oh, you're making me hungry. Oh man. Yeah, it was. I have to tell you, I was also like, and I'm a recovering metalhead. I love that kind of music. Very angry though, but there's got some great technique, great scales to use. Very different. But when I found that White Trash album, that was exactly the time period that I needed to find it in. It's so much positivity, and from the first song, "Give It Everything You Got," such positive messages, and again, knocked me out of my socks. So thank you for 20 plus years of awesomeness in my life. Are you ready to get into it?
Very welcome.
Thank you. Okay, let's get into it, okay? Mr. Edgar Winter, it is known that you come from a very musical family. Do you remember the first time you played an instrument? What was it, if you do?
It was. I do. It was ukulele. And our family, as you just mentioned, everyone in our family was musical. My dad played guitar, banjo. He played alto sax in a swing band in his youth. He sang in the choir, a beautiful tenor voice. And my mom played beautiful classical piano. Granddad played fiddle, violin, and my great-grandfather played trumpet. And because music was such a sort of a household activity, I thought everybody played. And it was like a rude awakening when we got old enough to start trying to form bands, like our friends around the neighborhood. It's, what, your daddy didn't show you no chords or nothing? It was like, it was something, and I said, oh, this is like a sort of a special thing. Everybody doesn't do this. But to answer your question specifically, our dad showed us our first chords on ukuleles when I was 6 years old. Johnny was 8 or 9. And we started playing ukuleles, singing Everly Brothers songs. So we were just cute kids. Then Johnny graduated to guitar, and I said, well, I'll just play everything else.
Well, he must have been really happy with that because, a lot of ukulele chord shapes are actually guitar chord shapes. So I'm guessing that he was able to take it over very easily and, perhaps very quickly, too.
No doubt. And it was a beautiful way to be introduced to music. Someone once asked me what I thought was a great question. I was doing this interview, and the guy said, what is your first memory of music? And I said, ooh, that's really a good question, because I didn't have an immediate answer for it, and I knew, like, it would have to be before I was 6 when I actually started playing. And what I was finally able to come up with was being nestled in my mother's lap. And this was before there were no words to go with this. It was just purely an emotional experience. But I was nestled in my mother's lap, and I could hear this beautiful music just flowing over me. It was just a transcendent experience. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what the word music was, but there was this sound, this sensation, and it was so beautiful. And then I squirmed up and between her arms, and I could see the keyboard. She was playing the piano, and then I could see her, just the beautiful undulation of her hands making these graceful movements. And I remember thinking, oh, these hands, they're somehow creating, there's some synergy between these, the hands and what I'm hearing. And I'll never forget that moment. I was just swept away into this world that I had never imagined, could exist before. And it actually, like, when I think about music, I think this is unusual because I've asked that question to a number of people and usually it's something like a record they heard or a TV or something. It's something mechanical, but I think that warmth and love. When I think about music, I think about family because we all grew up, playing music together, uh, and it was also a very transcendent spiritual experience. I really think of music as just that. It's somehow when you're involved in music, whether you're playing yourself or just listening to someone great that is playing, you're swept away in that moment. All your cares fall away, and you're totally in that moment, and there's no feeling like that when you're on stage and you feel that kind of connection with an audience, and there's also that sense of being part of something greater than yourself, and it's what I love about music.
Right on. As children, did you and Johnny ever hear people say the words child prodigy when growing up? Did you ever hear that?
No, not really.
Really?
We were just talented kids, and we'd play. Oh, and those little boys, they ain't half bad.
Well,
coming from Texas, I didn't start to hear prodigy until early in our careers, and I think people sort of made that assumption, and we were talented kids. There's no doubt about it. But I don't recall hearing that term, prodigy.
well,
So there you go.
there is good, there's great, excellent, but I think, prodigy is on a different level, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up, where, but I would put you definitely in that category, prodigy. I wouldn't know what else to describe you particularly. Just, you excel at so many different instruments, and you just play them so well. You're the kind of musician.
Thank you.
You're the kind of musician that I think inspires people to play harder and study hard, or you're so good that, people get demoralized and just like, give me the triangle and let me just bang on this. I think that's how good you are, if you don't mind me saying.
Well, thank you. I just think that prodigy is kind of it's not what you would consider like a sort of Texas term. It's sort of rustic and just not the type of thing I think that you would hear, in that area. But certainly we were recognized, all through school. We had bands, and we would play at all of the dances and so forth, church socials, and everybody knew who we were, and we were definitely acknowledged and respected. I just don't remember hearing the word prodigy associated with that. But thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it.
Anytime. As I touched upon earlier, you are proficient in many different instruments. But which one of them all is your favorite? Now, I want to almost say piano or maybe the saxophone, but I really don't know. I figure you'll answer this question better than I will.
Alto sax.
That's your favorite?
Doubt.
Really?
Yeah, that is my favorite. And basically when Johnny switched to guitar, he just took to that immediately, and it was apparent he was going to be the guitar player. And
really?
So I switched to bass. I played bass for a while, and then electric pianos came out. And I'll never forget when I heard dun 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 dun. Ray Charles doing What I Say. I said, "Oh, what a cool sound! What is that?" I got an electric piano because I remembered playing on like an old upright, you'd stick a mic in it and it would feed back, and I remember just beating my hands bloody on one of those things, and then all of a sudden, I've got an electric piano, I've got an amp, I can turn it up. That was great. But anyway, then I played drums for a while, and I didn't I didn't start with saxophone until my early teens. I found my dad's old alto sax up in the attic, and I had not really heard him play. And what I love about saxophone is it's such an expressive instrument. Like compared to a piano, you strike a note, it's a machine. It's rods and hammers, and you can hit it harder. You can put a sustain on it with the sustain pedal, but that's about it. Saxophone, your life's breath is supporting the tone. You can bend notes with your embouchure, with your lip, and it feels like it becomes an extension of your body, when you play it. And guitar is similar in that you can bend the strings. There's a lot more individuality, that goes into playing an instrument like guitar or saxophone. To me, they're very similar in that respect. All the horns are like that. Mm-hmm. And I learned I play alto, tenor, baritone, soprano, all the saxophones, flute, clarinet. I played a little trumpet and trombone in high school, and I just wanted to learn as much about music. Like Johnny was the one with the drive and the ambition.
Yes.
You had mentioned earlier that he's more the extrovert and I the introvert, and that's absolutely true. Back as far as I can remember, Johnny was going to be a star. He watched Bandstand and read all the magazines. He had a huge record collection and knew everybody that played on every record, and he particularly loved the blues, but he listened to it all, and he was Johnny Cool Daddy Winter with the pompadour and the shades and the guitars and the girls, and I was like the quiet kid that played all the instruments. So one of the other things that I always hear is sibling rivalry, and that didn't exist because Johnny loved the spotlight, and I, on the other hand, was quite content to avoid it whenever possible. So I was kind of like when I look back on it, I was sort of the musical director. Like Johnny would figure out a song, he'd learn the guitar chords and learn how to learn the words and sing the song, and then it was up to me to figure out all the other parts, and then because a lot of our friends weren't musical, I would teach them how to play it. So that's how I kind of got interested in all the different instruments. Well,
I personally,
it kind of makes sense if you think about it.
Well, I've thought about this a lot, actually. I've actually heard and read quite a few of your interviews over the last 20 years, and some of your answers, I've heard this years ago because I've seen quite a few of your interviews, and you're saying this. Mm-hmm. This is fantastic. I finally get a chance to get a crack at interviewing you. We were going to talk about you just mentioned the word extroverted, and I brought that up earlier. But did you ever think about becoming a rock star, like when you were younger? I know that Johnny was very ambitious, but did you ever really want this as well too, or did it just kind of happen?
No, it just wasn't. It wasn't in my sense of reality. I wanted to be, my dream was just to become a better musician. I just, like Johnny reached out to the world with his music, and it was also, I think, a means to an end. He wanted to become popular, and I sort of withdrew into my own musical world. I just loved the beauty of chords, harmony, rhythm. It was like discovering a whole new world to me, and it gave me a sense of security and identity. It was something. It it was sort of like my own little private escape world, for lack of a better term. So I just never thought about becoming famous. But I'll relate a story that this is something that I still remember. We were sitting up in our backyard in the treehouse our dad had built for us, and Johnny was kind of looking up into the branches, and he had that faraway look, and he said, I guess maybe I was 8 or 9, and Edgar, one of these days, I'm going to make it. And you may not think so, but you will too. And it struck me so funny. And then he said, I want you to remember this day and remember what I said. And I still do to this day now. And that's the odd thing about memory. Like around that time, I can't remember what grade I was in or who the teacher was then or any other thing that I was doing. But that memory is really vivid. I think it's because he asked me to remember it. And when all of that changed was at Woodstock.
Yes.
And that, to me, that's what I mark as the beginning of my musical career. And up to that point, I had just been like a sort of more of an instrumental. I would sing once in a while, and I love singing harmony. I love singing with Johnny, because that's the way we started out as kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to be a singer, and, I considered myself an instrumentalist and more of a serious musician. I was interested in jazz and classical. Thankfully, I've gotten over that. I love to have fun with music these days. But Woodstock, being first, it was just the vibe that set against the social backdrop of civil rights and the peace movement. And I was in a press trailer, and there was no schedule. Nobody knew when they were supposed to go on. It was just like they were looking around for whoever was around and capable of getting up there and playing. And so somebody shook me out of dead sleep and said, "Oh, you go on?" And said, "Okay." So I stumbled out there on stage, and as we started to play, I just remember looking out over this endless sea of humanity, and just it blew my mind. I thought, how did I get here? What is this? And it made me realize that music was so much more than just my own personal private world, or just entertainment, or even art, just the artistic part of music that I love so much. But I could see that it also had the power to reach out and unite these people and bring them together in this unique way that I never would have considered before. And after that, I started to think about what it would be like to be not just a musician, but an artist, that I might have something to say. And that part of it had just really never occurred to me. So
interesting.
There you have it.
Well, I was one of my questions that I had for you revolves around Woodstock. Now, around that time, Johnny had that big article in Rolling Stone. I believe he signed perhaps the most lucrative record deal at that time with an amazing advance. Around that time, 1969, you saw all that stuff happening to your brother. What was going on in your head? You must have really excited both him and, of course, you, because you probably were going to be playing on a lot of sessions and concerts with him, right?
Yeah, I was amazed when the whole I was playing in Houston when I heard about the Rolling Stone article, and Johnny's. It was like a seemingly almost immediate overnight thing, which of course it really wasn't, because he'd been working and playing his whole life, everything that he had done leading up to that moment. But then Johnny called me and he said, "Hey man, you got to get up here. It's really happening." And you know, we had grown up playing in clubs and dances and so forth. I'd never played in a concert situation, and all of a sudden we were doing these real shows and huge festivals like Woodstock. So it it was it was a completely different world, and one that I had never imagined. Uh, Even though Johnny had always talked about becoming famous, it never really. I never. My mind just didn't work that way, and it was it was very surprising to me when it actually happened. I said, "Man, he actually did it," and that's when he became my hero, my musical hero. And also he was a living hero to me because he kind of showed me that albinism, rather than being a drawback or a disability, could actually be cool. He turned it around and made it work in his favor.
Well, if I can just jump in here for 1 second, I think that 100% I agree on that, because the thing is, especially in the 70s, there's so many great qualified, not just musicians, but songwriters, but, who stood out a lot because of their very unique look, was Johnny and Edgar Winter. So, that's a great way. I think it's important to be different and unique in anything that you do. If you open up a hamburger restaurant, or if you have a band, there's so many great artists out there. But, what kind of sets you apart from everybody? Visually, for sure, you and your brother being albinos, I think helped do that, right?
Absolutely. And Johnny, I think, realized that, even at an early age, but he certainly made it work for him in his career as well. And the other thing that happened around that time was when Johnny's manager realized that there was a brother and who looked very similar and was also really talented. Of course, his thinking was, "Oh, now we've got two brothers. It should be the Winter brothers." And it just one amazing albino playing incredible blues guitar is cool, but two albinos, that would have even more notoriety and shock value, whatever you want to refer to it as. And of course, Johnny did not. His thinking was, "I've worked my whole life to establish this particular blues persona and identity, and now suddenly it's going to be the Winter Brothers." So we had very different musical tastes, and because of that reason, it was easy for me. I think the only time that I felt like I was maybe encroaching on Johnny's territory was when I put together the band White Trash.
Yes.
And it was not. It was really R&B, which is different from blues. Johnny loved the primitive Delta blues. That was his first love. And his acoustic slide playing, I think, that in that traditional style is the best I've ever heard.
I love that song, Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, and he loved all the old guys like Lightning Hopkins and Muddy Waters and Elmore James and John Lee Hooker and I loved Ray Charles and Bobby Blue Bland and B.B. King, more urban style blues and horn bands, but like. When I put together White Trash, like a lot of the guys that I used in that band were in rival bands. The lead singer, Jerry LaCroix, he had a band called Jerry and the Dominoes, and I think Johnny felt like I was sort of defecting to the enemy camp, but that was never my intention. The reason I put together White Trash was because I went all over the nation looking for the best musicians, that I could find. New York. I was there in New York. I went to Chicago. I went to Berkeley. Boston. Berkeley's great music school. Went out on the West Coast in California, and that was when I realized that there was something really special and unique about the music in Texas where I grew up. So I went home and got all the guys. It was like a revival, a reunion of a lot of the guys that I played with in bands and some of the guys that were in rival bands. So, hold on a second. But for the most part, because our tastes were so different, we had very completely different, particularly after I formed the Edgar Winter group, and Frankenstein became a huge hit. I think I was thought of more as a keyboard player because I happened to be the guy who came up with the idea of putting a strap on the keyboard.
I knew that. I definitely knew that.
And I think, when I look back on my career, that's one of the most meaningful things. And it's like a deceptively simple idea that you would think, well, surely someone is very obvious, but I just happen to be the first person to think of it. And it really did. It changed the face of music. I started to see bands, that were utilizing that. I remember we played a show with Billy Preston, and then like 3 weeks later, I saw Billy doing it on TV, and I said, "Oh, okay, this is going to be an actual thing here." But with They Only Come Out at Night, this was like the cover, and which was really. This was during the glam rock period, and there were people like David Bowie and Alice Cooper. It was really a satirical comment on the times. It was like sort of like a joke cover, and I didn't expect people to, really take it seriously. And then, like, people were expecting me to, play shows, with in that persona with makeup and all that. I said, no, that's not going to happen. I'm still the same person I was. It's just an album cover. So,
I want to get.
It served to really separate, like Johnny and I. It gave us very different. We had different approaches to music and different tastes. So.
I'm going to get to that album just a little bit later on. Except I don't want to gloss over your brilliant debut, Entrance. There's before we get to that part, that's a couple of years later, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Entrance, if that's okay with you.
Sure, of course.
So I feel when I hear, and I think it's a brilliant album, very interesting album. It's a it's a great melange of rock, blues, and jazz and gospel. But do you feel the album could have performed perhaps better commercially if it wasn't so eclectic? In retrospect, when you think about this?
Well, I had no interest in being commercial at that time. And it was for me, part of what I was about at that time, like, I never could understand why there were such separate musical genres. And to me, it was almost like musical segregation. It was like, okay, all you cowboys will play country music, and these black people are going to play blues, and then all of these rebellious, kind of intellectual people have jazz, and all the conservative people have their classical music. And I just thought, why can't you have music that sort of ignores those categories and just like I thought of it as a sort of a symphonette, the Winter's Dream, and I wanted to incorporate as many styles, just play the music that I liked without any commercial considerations entering into it. And when I proposed that idea after Woodstock, was when shortly after that was when I got interested and decided maybe I would make an album. And Johnny's manager said, "Well, I can set up a meeting with Clive Davis, who was the president of CBS at that time." So I explained that whole concept to Clive, and Clive was fascinated. And I told him, I said, "This is experimental music, and it's not going to have any commercial potential or application. It's not going to sell records." And he made a very interesting comment. He said, "Well, I'm okay with that, but are you sure you are?" And I thought that was a very perceptive thing for him to say. And I said, "Absolutely, this is what I want to do." So I owe a great debt of thanks to Clive for believing in me as an artist and allowing me to make that record. And if I hadn't been allowed to do that, that is what allowed me to move forward and then evolve in different directions. That otherwise, I might have been frustrated, and never felt like I had the opportunity, to do that. So, but all I wanted to do was broaden musical horizons and make people aware of all the music that's out there. And I thought, well, this is something different, and nobody has done this. I think it is a unique album. I don't think anyone, has even. I mean, there's a lot of fusion. There's a lot of really interesting music, but nobody's really done exactly that particular thing.
Well, there's something I wanted to ask you about Hung Up. Now, I don't know if I was having some sort of musical auditory hallucinations or something like that, but I could have sworn that there is a riff in the key of G. Well, that song's based in the key of G, if I believe. I'd put money on that. But I think there's a riff that ends up in Frankenstein. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
Such and such.
Exactly.
You know how it goes better than I do.
And it is there. And I thought it was such a cool riff, and I said, well, nobody's heard it on Entrance. Very few people ever listened to that album. And Frankenstein was a thing that, like, now we're going off into...
We're going to get to that soon. We haven't covered White Trash.
A whole different area.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. I love that era, too. So we're definitely going to get there.
I don't know.
But I love that
I wrote the riff, the da-da-da-da-da.
Yes.
I wrote that when I was playing with Johnny as a sort of a blues walk-on, and I thought, oh, that's simple, and it's real, and the trio can play that, and so we did a primitive version of it where I played all the instruments. I played Hammond B3 and alto sax, and I did a dual drum solo with Johnny's drummer, Red Turner. We had 2 kits of drums. But when I got into the synthesizer and started designing different sounds, we kept adding parts to it, and it kept getting longer and longer. And I thought, well, I'll just stick. And then I said, well, let's do it backwards. So we started doing it up and down, after a couple of years. And I've gotten so used to that. It sounds funny to me when I just hear the riff repeated over and over. I like it up and down.
Has anybody pointed that out to you about Hung Up, the riff?
Oh, of course.
Okay, all right. Oh, I thought it was the first one. Dang it! Oh, okay.
Well, not a lot of people, but I'd
okay,
say
you make me feel better.
Maybe 4 or 5 people. But I mean, it's pretty. I mean, if you have a musical ear, it's pretty unmistakable. That it is exactly the same riff. And but I appreciate your actually picking that out. I mean, obviously, being a musician, I think musicians would always know it. But it's hard to tell how people that aren't musicians. I think, well, when you listen to music, it's hard to keep from analyzing the music and figuring out the parts and, understanding what it is.
Full disclosure, I actually turned out to be a music teacher with perfect pitch, and every time I listen to music, I automatically think, okay, what key is it in? What's roughly the BPM time signature? What chord are they shuffling? What's the melodies? What's the harmonies? Who's taking the fifth? Who's taking the flat seven? Blah 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 blah. Yeah, I can't stop. I can't be a fan anymore. I'm very analytical, I think.
Yeah.
And dissecting your songs is quite the Herculean feat, too. You definitely put my brain to work. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Moving forward, I wanted to talk about White Trash, which, I guess with today and today's language and whatnot, I don't know if that particular name would fly. I wanted to ask you about, why did you name that band that, if you don't mind me asking? I hope I'm not out of line asking you that.
No, not at all. Well, we were white guys that loved playing black music, and we couldn't very well refer to ourselves as black. So, actually the name came from John Smith, the tenor saxophone player in the band. His grandmother, when John was started out with the band, she always wanted John to kind of make more of himself, and this actually came from John told me this story about when he had gone home and his grandmother had cooked a nice dinner and everything, and asked what he was doing, and he said, "Oh, we got this band with Edgar and all these other guys," and she said, "You still playing with that white trash?"
So that's how it came.
And John told me that. I said, "Hey, white trash. That's what we should call ourselves."
But now, if you're going to bring it back, if you were to bring it back today, you'd probably have to alter that name, you think, or?
I think I mean, it's not politically correct, I guess, but it's not disparaging black people.
No.
It's just like, I mean, we were guys that loved down home, funky kind of music, and to me, I think it was the perfect name for the band.
Mm-hmm.
And even like when I played, like now, I have a black bass player and a black drummer.
I've seen it.
And
Yeah.
so when we would do some, we'd do shows, and I'd say, anybody out there remember the band White Trash?
Mm-hmm.
And people would say, yeah. I don't think that name's going to work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But,
You've had those guys for a while, I think. I remember the last, well, maybe, I don't know, the last time I saw you in Toronto, geez, was it 2010? It's been a while. But you must have had these people in your band for a while, right?
oh, yeah, long, like 10 years at least.
I remember seeing you with Rick Derringer about 2010, and it was great to see both you and him play a show together. I closed my eyes and just dreamt it was 1972. I wasn't even a twinkle in my dad's eye at that point, but it was good to just pretend. I was at the Fillmore, and I saw Rick Derringer open up for Edgar Winter. Woo! We'll talk about him in a little bit. I guess we can't really ignore Rick Derringer when talking about the album They Only Come Out at Night and Shock Treatment. This is where we segue to the Edgar Winter group now. He had some great players. I love Dan Hartman and his contributions to the music that you guys released. Chuck Ruff was a great drummer. Ronnie Montrose was one heck of a guitar player, as is Rick Derringer. I know that Johnny ended up working with Rick. How did you end up working with him? I guess you guys were friends, but did management suggest you also maybe work with Rick, like Big Brother Johnny?
Well, our manager was interested in the McCoys, and he took us out to a club in New York.
The Scene.
Steve Paul.
Steve Paul.
And we saw the McCoys, and Johnny and I had played "Hang On Sloopy," when in our bands when we were growing up.
Love that song.
It was so. When I heard Rick play, I was like immediately felt a musical kinship with him, and I said, "Oh, this guy." Even though he's from a completely different area, the Midwest, he's obviously listened to a lot of the same music and has a lot of the same musical influences. And what I liked about Rick was his versatility. He knew just enough theory to be able to I wouldn't consider him a jazz player, but I never had to worry about how complex. If I was going to write something, I knew that Rick would be able to cover whatever it was, and a lot of the songs that I was writing then had more complex changes and so forth. But Rick, he played great pedal steel. He was like country. The country folk picking style, he could do that. He's a great rock player. He could do it all. And Ronnie was the more like crazy, unpredictable. To me, Ronnie, first of all, when I put together that band and made that record, I really did. I was thinking specifically of Clive Davis, and the reason being that Clive had supported and believed in me as an artist, and he had given me. You mentioned Johnny's lucrative contract. He gave me a great contract as well, and I had received really generous advances and never sold a lot of records. And I felt like I owed it to Clive personally and to the company to do something that would have a wider audience. And that turned into like this. I just decided, well, if I'm gonna do that, I've got to have a different kind of band. Mm-hmm. White Trash had broken up, and I said, well, I'll put together the quintessential all-American rock band, and I'm going to find guys that not only are great players, but that have that look good, that have stage presence, charisma, that could basically front their own bands, and it turned into this massive talent search. And I remember listening to demo tapes that came into the office for months, and when I heard Dan Hartman's tape, I just said immediately, I said, "Oh, this is the guy. This guy is great. He's got a great radio voice. He writes great songs." And then when I met him, he's a multi-instrumentalist, much like myself. I heard him play. He was really mainly a guitar player, but I heard him play guitar, bass, drums, keyboards. He had a great overall sense of music. But I really liked Ronnie Montrose as the guitar player, because to me, like, bands are all about chemistry, and to me, like, Dan had there was sort of a youthful innocence about his approach and his playing, and to me, Ronnie had the opposite, kind of this bad boy,
more muscular,
unpredictable. He had all of these Pete Townsend moves, and he was like the guy. I thought he had the the star guitar player personality, and then Ronnie suggested Chuck as the drummer, and I just the first time we got Chuck, when Chuck came up, we flew him. And Ronnie, they had played in bands together. I think they had a band with Sammy Hagar at some point.
Montrose.
But as soon as I saw, when Chuck sat down behind the drums, is like when we started to play, and oh, this is cool. I like it. His groove is there. And I looked over at Chuck, and just like the intensity, he was like playing the drums with every fiber of his being, like shaking his hair. It was just like blew me away. I said, "Man, this guy has got so much personality as a drummer." And that was at that point. I said, "This is the group. This is it."
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to talk Dan into switching. We had 5 pieces for a while, 2 guitars, and Randy Joe Hobbs was playing bass, and then, like, on the first couple of songs, Johnny B was the drummer. Johnny B from Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheel, great drummer. And I don't know if you know this, but on They Only Come Out at Night, on We All Had a Real Good Time,
Love
and
that
Free
song.
Ride. Those are Johnny B's playing drums on those songs.
I didn't know that. I know those Dan Hartman. I believe it was a Dan Hartman penned songs. Free Ride, for the most part. I think you. I remember reading something about how you contributed like a last line in the verse. We all had a real good time. I believe that was a Dan Hartman. Was it not? Or
Dan and I co-wrote a lot of, like, he had the idea for Free Ride. I just wrote a couple of lines in that, and I came up with the "Come on, take a free ride,
Free
yeah,
Ride."
yeah, yeah. The
Love
gospel-y thing at the end, and the with the the synthesizer.
Yeah.
I said, well, we'll put some synthesizer in it too, since we were using it on Frankenstein. So I helped out, but We All Had a Real Good Time was another song that Dan was. The thing that was so cool about Dan was both of those songs are like guitar riff songs, like, and then down, 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 down.
Well, that's a great riff. Yeah.
They're great guitar riffs and signature guitar riffs, and that was one of the things that Dan was really, really amazingly good at.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the perfect person for me to write with, because I always felt like I like with my jazz and I have a tendency to write more complicated music, and it's hard for me to simplify and do stuff that that's commercial. Dan loved pop music and was just naturally commercial. That's the way, and that's why we were really great combination. Because he would come up with a basic idea, and then I would introduce these little variations into it. Like a lot of times I would think, well, that's pretty good, but that's a little generic. Let's change that up a bit, And so we were a good team in that way.
I often find myself thinking, what do I identify with more, the music of the Edgar Winter group or White Trash? And my answer is both sounds quite different from each other. They may be. Both sounds are very appealing because I consider myself a classic rock revivalist, a blues rock enthusiast, and that album to me is like blues, for me personally. But the Edgar Winter group, I love a good catchy sing-alongable song. Which Frankenstein is not, but it is very catchy. I mean, you can't sing because there's no words, which is amazing. But I feel that Edgar Winter Group has more pop sensibilities, so that appeals to a different part of me. My question for you, sir, is which one do you think you might have been more connected to?
Well, I think White Trash is definitely more exemplifies my roots and what I came from, and one of the reasons that White Trash broke up was the fact that I wanted to see that band evolve like the Beatles did. Like I remember when the early Johnny and I started out playing all the early Beatles, like I Want to Hold Your Hand and If I Fell and I Love Her, all the old, Tell Me Why. But you're starting around like Rubber Soul and Revolver, and then when it got to Sgt. Pepper's, it was like a completely different sound. And I wanted... I knew all the guys in White Trash had the ability, to evolve, but they really didn't want to. In other words, Jerry loved all that R&B, Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett. He was content just to go on playing that, forever. Right. And I didn't want to see that happen. Plus, I think, Jerry felt like he wasn't getting the recognition that he felt like he deserved. And at that point, I was happy for those guys to continue as White Trash. And I said, "Oh, you're welcome to the name. I'm not, whatever I do, it's not going to have anything to do with that." So, and they did, and they had a cool band, for all the way up till the point when Bobby Ramirez died. That I think for Jerry, they were very close and had played together in, bands as kids, and he didn't feel like there was any way to replace Bobby, and I think he was right. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, White Trash for me would be more who I feel that I represents my roots and what I grew up playing. So for that reason, it's probably closer to my heart. But and also like Dan was such a huge part. He made the Edgar Winter group. I felt like the strength of that group lay in the collaboration and the co-writing between Dan and myself. But Frankenstein happened to be the song that actually launched the Edgar Winter group, and that was something that had nothing to do with what I considered to be the general direction of the group, and I think that's really interesting in itself. Like, I thought Free Ride had the hit potential, and I thought that, like I said, that's great car song, great. Like, I can imagine, like, riding along, blasting Free Ride on the radio. Of course, Frankenstein is the ultimate great blasting in your car song, I think. But I had never considered that. We never even intended to put Frankenstein on the record. That was just something that we played live. But well, anyway, there's your answer.
Speaking of Free Ride and Frankenstein, arguably, debatably, your two biggest songs, you kept real busy over the years since the 70s, rock revival, and then it went on to disco and whatnot. I think that, it's maybe very likely that a lot of people know your music without really knowing who you are. For example, your music has been licensed out to so many movies. The first time I ever heard your music, much like your buddy Mac Rebenock, Dr. John the Night Tripper, I owe great debt to the movie Dazed and Confused, because they taught me how to throw a bush party at 14, but they also taught me about classic rock and about this fella from Beaumont, Texas, and from Louisiana, and all these great, bands, Nazareth and stuff. So, but your music was, has been and currently is featured in so many different things. Do you think it's very likely that a lot of people know kind of who you are without really knowing who you are? Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct in that. I don't think that people have any idea. I think that they only come out at night, and the imagery of the synthesizer with the strap, and I think that that's probably what the majority of people would think I am. It's hard to really dispel an image like that. But all I've done throughout my career, I've never paid any attention to. I just play whatever music. Like when I wanted to make Jasmine Night Dreams, I wanted to get back into something a little closer to what Entrance had been, and I was loving Stevie Wonder at that time. I just I just feel like music is all about being true to yourself, whatever it is. Each thing you do is just a sort of a snapshot of, where you are in your life at that particular time, and whatever your interests happen to be there is going to be reflected in your music. I just don't think in terms of music as a career. I just never have. I just love music, and it's what I do, but I don't think of it as a profession or a job or a career. So that's just me.
Well, you said something about snapshot of time, and I agree wholeheartedly with the concept of an album. That's what you do. There's a reason why you're putting it out at this particular time. And unfortunately, we have to talk about Brother Johnny. Not unfortunately, it's a great album, but unfortunately, it took the death of your brother, the very talented Johnny Winter, my guitar hero. I'm a guitar player first. I worship your brother. I truth be told, I think I actually appreciate your music a little bit more, and I love your brother's music. But it took him to die, pass away in 2014, for you to make this. That's the whole reason why this is the Johnny Winter tribute album, right?
Yes.
So
and
it's a wonderful album.
Johnny, well, thank you, and it's so meaningful to me. I initially was never going to make this album, and shortly after Johnny's passing, I started to it generated a lot of interest, and I had offers from several companies that were interested in a tribute album.
Mm-hmm.
And, they would ask questions like, how long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? What guest artist can you guarantee? And I said, I have no idea. And it just made me feel as though these were just business people,
Parasites,
sensing an opportunity that wanted, to exploit Johnny's name.
Mm-hmm.
Just to sell records, and I did not want to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, maybe Paul Nelson or Rick Derringer or somebody is going to make. Somebody will make that tribute album. It's not going to be me.
Right.
Then, as years went by, I started to realize that it wasn't just that it was actually. I talked to so many people, Johnny's loyal, devoted fans that wanted to see that happen, and really, it started out with my wife Monique, who said, well, you always talk about how Johnny is your all-time musical hero, and you wouldn't be where you are were it not for him. Well, this is your opportunity to acknowledge and demonstrate that. And, she, so it started out really out of love, our love for Johnny and his music, and her just feeling that I think she sensed that I needed spiritually to do that album, and she couldn't have been more right about all of that, because part of my thinking about, I knew that it was going to be emotionally difficult. It was going to stir up a lot of the childhood memories, and I just was not emotionally prepared to do it right after, when I was talking about shortly after Johnny's passing. I was just devastated, and I couldn't have done the record then,
Mm-hmm.
even if I had wanted to. But after 3 or 4 years went by, and I started to feel that it was something, I just kept thinking about it, and I'd spent all of these years not making that record, and remembering all the music that we played together, and it turned out to be just this joyous, uplifting, beautiful experience, a life-altering experience, and I'm so happy that I did it, and now it's I couldn't believe it when it was Grammy nominated, and now it's a Grammy-winning album. And what's so meaningful about that to me is the fact that this is the music that Johnny and I grew up on. It's played in the style that we played in our first bands as kids. And when we played Woodstock, we were playing blues. And Johnny, of course, is a great rock player. His first love was always the blues,
Mm-hmm.
but it was always blues rock.
Mm-hmm.
And then our careers diverged, and I did Entrance and White Trash, all the things that we've discussed and talked about. And now this album, Brother Johnny, is back to the blues, the music that we started out playing together, and it just feels like this this. After I finished, it was very cathartic and therapeutic as well.
I
And
can imagine.
there were some beautiful, uplifting moments and some really sad moments, in it. As I remember when I was singing "Drown in My Own Tears,"
Oh, yes.
and but to have that music, I've never really cared that much for awards, but I have to admit I really wanted this one because it it's not the award, but the recognition, the acknowledgement, and the validation for all the music that Johnny and I made together over all of these years really means the world to me. And to have the Academy recognize that, and then, for hopefully people will hear that record and they'll go back and listen to, Johnny's early catalog and stuff that I've done. And it's just a beautiful, full circle kind of resolution, and a feeling of closure. And after I made it, I had this immense feeling of just peace and serenity that's really indescribable. But and it really is for me. I did it. I did it for my wife Monique and for my mom and dad, for the Winter family, just to help perpetuate the Winter name and legacy that Johnny left behind. So it couldn't have worked out any more beautifully. That at this, I never expected to have music on the charts ever again in my life, much less win an award. And kind of in a way, it's kind of like Natalie Cole, not wanting to sing her dad's music. I spent my career kind of staying out of Johnny's way, trying to avoid. I didn't want to be competitive, and we had very different musical tastes, so it was a natural thing in a way as well. But going back and playing that music turned out to give me just such. It was a great source of strength and comfort to me, to go back and play all of those songs. So, and it really is, a gift of love in memory to Johnny and our family, and to all the fans out there, that have followed Johnny's and my careers throughout all these years. I knew that they would love it, and it's definitely a life-altering experience, and I'm so happy that I did it.
Well, it's a fantastic album. I do have to finish up, unfortunately. I could talk to you for 3 hours. I don't know if you want to talk to me, but I do have to wrap this up. And I want to say, again, thank you so much for donating your time for my little radio show. There's so many more questions to ask. I feel that I'll probably never get this opportunity again, but I want to tell you how much... before I let you leave, sir, I have to tell you, my particular order, 4 horsemen of classic rock is Johnny and Edgar Winter, Allman Brothers, Humble Pie, Led Zeppelin, done. And I think your music is fantastic, and I try to do as best as I can over the last 11 years on my radio show, Rock It Up, to promote the Winter Brothers. I think it's criminal how underrated that you two gentlemen were. Everybody talks about how awesome the Allmans are, and that's great, they are. But I just wish that more people needed to hear about how great the Winters are. One last thing before I let you leave. In 2021, I had to do this, and I tell everybody about Johnny and Edgar Winter. I got the Frankenstein monster's face tattooed on my left elbow, and when anybody asked me, why did you do that? That looks ridiculous. I did it for Johnny and Edgar Winter. Enough said. Had to tell you that.
Thank you, Darren. That everything you said just is it's wonderful to to feel like in some small way that you've made a contribution and made a difference, especially among fellow musicians, and that's basically what my dream was. Johnny achieved his dream of fame and fortune and stardom, and even though I never wanted it, it came to me as well. But just to be able to carry on and I feel like we all stand on the shoulders of those that have gone before, and if I can in some way perpetuate that, and like the great musicians like Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder that inspired me, if the music that I do when my time comes, hopefully it will go on in that way, to find another musical generation. So I want to thank you for being a part of that and helping to keep that dream alive.
Excellent. Well, you keep on playing that rock and roll, sir, and hopefully I'll see you next time you come to Toronto. Thank you for donating your time, Darren, again, and yes, thank you so much, Teach.
And I enjoyed talking to you, and it's always more fun to talk about all of this, to someone that is musically inclined, musicians that really know what's going on.
Oh, well, the next time you come to Toronto, please, I hope I can buy you a drink or two and just chat your ear up about music theory and all kinds of chord inversions and diminished scales and all kinds of stuff. I could pick your brain for hours. Thank you again. Okay, I have to go, but you take care, and we'll see you in Toronto, hopefully.
Too.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Keep on
rocking. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Thank you guys for listening to this special broadcast. This show's normally on Saturdays, but today I did this for Edgar Winter because he had the availability. I won't be here on Saturday because I'll be in New Jersey, but I'll be back soon, and this show is going to be wrapped up. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.